Hello and welcome to... Hold on a second. Something's not right. That's better. And there's the blow to the upload flow. So, I've just completed the third Doctor, Jon Pertwee, 1970 to 1974. And here is my breakdown of the third Doctor. So yes, as the intro suggests, I've just completed Jon Pertwee's third Doctor, and in this video I'll be breaking down what I've learnt from this era, what his Doctor is like, the general format of his stories, and then later on I'll be recommending some stories for you to start with Jon Pertwee's third Doctor. This era of Doctor Who is where it starts being in colour, it moves into the 1970s, and as we learnt from the end of the War Games, the Doctor gets exiled to Earth in a trial by Time Lords. This one is very much an Earth-based story. This is where we get to the show as we sort of see it in the public eye. This is where you get to, let's say, the colour, the unit, the Earth-based stories, and moving slowly into Tom Baker, you get to the show that is generally, as the population understands it, Doctor Who. In terms of the formatting, as I say, the Doctor is stranded on Earth without the use of his TARDIS, so we get more Earth-based stories. We meet Unit, the Brigadier, Sergeant Menton and Captain Mike Yates, among others. And it becomes more of a family vibe, more of a team vibe, as the Doctor solves problems on Earth. But don't let that dissuade you if you're more of a sci-fi fan, because, as I will tell you, basically the Doctor being stranded on Earth leaves very, very little opposition. They find ways very, very quickly to find non-Earth-based plots. We also meet the companions Liz Shaw, Jo Grant and Sarah Jane Smith, which I'll be taking you through on my way through the stories. So before any further ado, I'll let you know what the formatting is for this era. Jon Pertwee's third Doctor has 5 seasons. Now these are very different to the 60s, as I've previously been explaining. They had 7 or 9 parts per season and tended to be upwards of 6, 7 and 8 parts long and ran all the way through the year. Jon Pertwee's Doctor has a very different style. They are 5 seasons of 5 parts in each, except for season 7, which I'll go into. I'm going to break down the structure of this era, but it is very, very simple, and this is a fantastic place for a beginner, so I'm going to explain why that is the case, and I really recommend, if you've never seen the classics before, this would be a great place to begin with. So we go for season 7 at first. This is Spearhead from Space, which is a 4-parter, and then 3 7-parters, Doctor Who and the Silurians, The Ambassadors of Death, and Inferno. This is very much a starting place. They don't know much about the colour, they don't really know much about the formatting, the Earth-based stories, so this is a bit of a test series. And it has a one-off companion in Liz Shaw, who is the companion through all this 4-part run, and then due to Caroline John's pregnancy, she gets replaced. So this is sort of a standalone little era that is quite easy to get into. As I say, there's 4 parts, there's 7 episodes and 4 episodes, in total making 25. So if you break it down into just 4 stories, it's very simple to watch. And I am also going to be releasing a 4-part shortened version of Inferno, which is a fantastic place to go. But I would also recommend doing the whole series as a 4-part, because Inferno sort of ties up a little bit of an arc. But yeah, season 7, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It does have the fantastic Spearhead from Space, which is a great introduction to the third Doctor and to basically the general common formatting of regeneration from now on. But it is like a sort of standalone era. We start again in season 8, so that's fine. Season 8 is a 5-part season, and it essentially runs more or less through the season as like 4 parts, 6 parts, 4 parts, and then 2 6-parts for a finale. That's not entirely the case, but that's like the general thing in your head. That's how it works. And season 8 introduces the Master as the Doctor's greatest enemy and essentially an old friend from Gallifrey. Season 8 has the Master as the lead villain in every story. And then at the end, we get a little bit of a break in season 9 and 10, but the Master is still a prominent figure. But yeah, season 8 is 5 parts, and it's purely the Master as the lead villain. I'll go into the Master more in a later video. This is just a basic rundown. And then, yeah, we have Jo Grant in season 8, 9 and 10. We have the Doctor trying to get his TARDIS working. The breakdown of the TARDIS is basically put down to a dematerialization circuit, which means that it can't leave the Earth, and the Doctor spends many experiments trying to get it to leave Earth, and on occasion he does manage to get to an alien planet. And then later on, the Time Lords say that they'll send him on missions, which means that he can basically go to where the Time Lords want him to go, and then come back to Earth. So very quickly it does become a spacey alien story again, in historical times, in alien planets. We meet Daleks, we meet Ogrons, we meet all sorts of different monsters, and it becomes basically Doctor Who as we know it again. And then in the 10th anniversary special, the Doctor gets the power of the TARDIS back as a special gift from the Time Lords, and ironically, he spends more time on Earth than he did before in that case. But yeah, so without much need to go into much greater detail, 8 and 9 are on Earth predominantly. Season 10, he has got his TARDIS back, and it is the Doctor and Jo Grant seeing the universe for those 5 parts. And then Jo Grant leaves at the end of season 10, and season 11 we get new companion Sarah Jane Smith. That is the basic formatting of the season in terms of how the episodic structure works. In terms of the formatting of the stories themselves, what the plots are, a lot of it is Earth-based, and you do get the political side of things like the Censorites, Enemy of the World, but because this is mostly Earth-based stories, it's less metaphor and more actual. So you've got stories quite a lot based on climate change, pollution, capitalism, general political nastiness. A lot of that is based on in the Third Doctor, because generally the setting is modern day Earth. You get a few historicals here and there, and you do get a few politicals in Alien Worlds, such as Peladon and things like that. But yeah, if you're interested in current affairs of the 1970s, this is a strong one in terms of like taking down the political structure of the 1970s. But you do get a bit of sci-fi hijinks because he's not as stranded on Earth as it makes him out to be. So now I'm going to break down some more detail on the characters themselves. The Third Doctor as Jon Pertwee evolves much more from the doddery grandad and then to the clown. This one is more of a James Bond type Doctor. He is sort of based on the Avengers, not that Avengers, this Avengers. Charlie's Angels, James Bond, he's more of an action type. He spends a lot of his time using Venusian Aikido, which basically involves him either tapping someone on the neck as they fall over, or he does some karate moves and they go flying around. It's very much action-based, and let's be fair, it's pretty flimsy 1970s choreographed karate moves, Aikidos. But yeah, that's sort of his run. He's sort of playing off the era of, like, say, the Avengers, James Bond, things such as that. He is a connoisseur of fine wines and fine food, and he also loves his cars. I think if Jon Pertwee had been around at the time and well, he probably would have been like a candidate for Top Gear. He loved driving anything, and quite often the Third Doctor is seen driving cars around because this era is Earth-based. You get Bessie, you get some sort of quad bikes, you get the Who-mobile, and they are mostly on Jon Pertwee's suggestion, and even sometimes vehicles he owned. So there's a lot of driving around, lots of low speed, sped up on the tape, action chase sequences, things such as this. His personality is a little bit more crotchety because he's stuck on Earth with these people who basically know nothing about aliens, and he gets very irritated when he's like constantly going, this is an alien menace, and they never believe him. So there's a lot more irritation, a lot more sarcasm and annoyance, but that also does lead to a lot of fun and a lot of comedy. This is also the first era where we start getting some of the comedy, dodgy visual effects. A lot of people criticise the classic era for having wobbly walls and dodgy CGI and dodgy green screen. This is sort of where it begins, because as a brief breakdown, blue screen and green screen were called colour separation overlay, or CSO, which basically means the skin tone of a person as an orangey pinky colour. They put a blue or green background on, and that means they're able to separate the colours and change the background, what we modern times know as green screen. This was the early days of that, so if they couldn't get out into the countryside to record an effect, or if something changes size, as it often did in the 70s, they would use CSO to alter the background and use visual effects and things. And in the very early days of this, and it doesn't really improve really in the 80s, you get a lot of famously dodgy effects in this, which are quite fun to watch, quite funny to tear apart and have a giggle at, but it is also a wonderful part of this era. You do start to notice an excessive use of it. There are stories what are more or less entirely like CSO in big sequences. So yeah, that's just a little side note that I think you'll find really enjoyable and comical and something to look out for. In terms of the extended unit family, this is an organisation set up in the 60s and running through the 70s, which basically is them fighting aliens or fighting anything that they don't understand on Earth at that period of time. And it is generally like the Brigadier bringing up a case who doesn't believe in anything that the Doctor says, and the Doctor very intelligently takes them down. You do have other little extras in the unit family, but they're the main ones. So yes, for recommendations for this run, I will be doing an extended video on who the Master is, potential unit, what stories to watch. You know the format of this channel by now. But in terms of just like basic stories to watch, there is Speared from Space in Season 7, and its sequel, Terror of the Autons, in Season 8. They are fantastic 4-parters, a brilliant introduction to the structure of the show. I would highly recommend that. There is an Auton box set with both of them in, and I think pretty much any Doctor Who fan would say start Pertwee there, and potentially even start the classics there. Fantastic starting points. There are 3 Dalek stories, which are Day of the Daleks, Planet of the Daleks, and Death to the Daleks. 3 very different Dalek stories, sci-fi, futuristic. There's ones actually with the Thals from Hartnell's era, and there's ones just for like silly puzzles. 3 very different Dalek stories to get your teeth into. I think it's quite evident his Dalek stories are more or less the Daleks thrown into somebody else's plot with this era, but they are still enjoyable. There's 2 stories on Peladon, which are basically a metaphor for the EU and for racism and things such as this. Here you get to meet the Ogrons, the Sea Devils. There's some very, very famous monsters that you'll probably have seen in promo pictures and things, so this is a great place to see some classic monsters. I would recommend a lot of the 4-parters of this era. The 6-parters are excellent. They're like watching films, because obviously they're getting used to the colour as well and the green screen. But the 4-parters are excellent, and I'll give you a rundown on which ones to watch soon. Yeah, the Third Doctor, I would say, for a beginner's guide, as this channel is, the Third Doctor is probably the perfect place to go, because it's the beginning of colour. You're not going to lose a lot because it's sort of a soft reboot. Sort of very, very similar to the Ninth Doctor's era in the family vibe, the modern day Earth story. So if you started with Eccleston and Tennant, Pertwee is the perfect place to go. And yeah, I'll be recommending what specific stories to do in the coming weeks. I'd like to thank everyone who's still following this channel. Feel free to subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff. I'd love to hear your views on what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. If this channel's been any help to you. I'm motoring on into the Tom Baker era now, so as I'm doing that, my videos might diversify. I've got a few different projects coming out, but I'm also sticking to this beginner's guide, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So I'm planning out the Tom Baker era, which is the longest one at 7 seasons, so I'm going to have plenty of time to think ahead. But right now, I'm looking forward to introduce you to Jon Pertwee, the Third Doctor, and I'll see you next time.